Most people go their entire lives being average at everything they try, and they think it's because they don't have talent. That's wrong. I've spent my career in environments where being average could get you killed. Israeli special operations, undercover work, and since then, I've transitioned to elite performance coaching, working with billionaires who built empires from nothing. And the one thing I can tell you from all of that is this: mastery in any mental pursuit has little to do with talent. There is an art to doing anything exceptionally well, and it has nothing to do with motivation, hacks, or finding your passion. At the end of the day, it comes down to how you build yourself and how you operate under pressure. So, let's break it down. My name is Itamar Marani. I'm an ex-Special Forces operative, undercover agent, jiu-jitsu black belt, and the author of Elite Performance. I work with 7, 8, and 9-figure entrepreneurs and achieve their highest potential while winning big. If you appreciate me making this content for free, hit the like button below. Let's get into it. Number 1, the lie about talent. Talent is the most convenient excuse in the world because it removes responsibility. If someone else is gifted, then you don't have to do the work, right? But in every high-performance environment I've been in, talent wasn't the challenge. It was usually being able to be comfortable with discipline. The truth is, most people aren't average because they lack ability. They're average because they operate only when conditions are good or convenient. They operate when they feel motivated, when it's convenient, when it's clear what they need to do. But real performance shows up when conditions degrade. That's where separation actually happens, and most people never train for that. 2, identity before skill. You do not rise to an elite level by learning more. You rise by becoming someone who operates differently. Skill is not the starting point. Identity is. Because your standards don't come from what you know. They come from who you believe you are and what you think you're capable of and how you can rise to the occasion if needed. And if you end up seeing yourself as someone who just tries, you'll negotiate. You'll procrastinate, you'll avoid the things you know you need to do because you say, I tried. But if you see yourself as someone who executes, who gets things done, there is no internal debate. You just move forward regardless of the conditions. In high-stakes environment, there's no room for trying your best. There's only execution and doing what is required. So the real question isn't, how do I get better? It's what kind of person does this at an elite level, and where am I not matching that yet? The gap is your real problem, and it's a part of your identity that you have to switch. Number 3, eliminate variability. Most people think mastery is about adding more knowledge, more tactics, more tools. It's not. As Bruce Lee famously said, I do not fear the man who knows 1,000 kicks, but I fear the man who's practiced one kick 1,000 times. Basically, mastery is about removing what makes you inconsistent, because inconsistency is what breaks you under pressure. In my background, we didn't train for perfect conditions. We trained for failure points and how we can mitigate them again and again and again. Where does this break? Where does that hesitation show up? Where do mistakes repeat themselves? What are the bottlenecks where danger exists? And then we constantly remove those variables because complexity looks impressive, but it collapses under stress. Simplicity holds. Mastery is when your performance becomes predictable, even when the environment isn't. There's a saying in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, don't drill until you get it right. Drill until you can't get it wrong. 4, build ruthless feedback. Most people do not improve because they protect how they feel, which is natural, but not effective. And it's not because they lack information. They just simply finish something and ask, did that go well? Elite performers ask a different question. They ask, where did something break? What are the lessons to learn and how can we implement it? And that's it. No ego, no story, no emotional detachment to failure or shame or any of that nonsense. Just where did the standard drop and what do we need to change? Because if you cannot see your errors clearly, you will repeat them. In elite environments, feedback wasn't optional. It was immediate and it was just part of the structure. After each operation or even after each training exercise, there was a hot debrief on the spot and a cold debrief when we got back to base. It was very specific, direct, and oftentimes a bit uncomfortable. But the reality is that delaying this stuff is expensive. The longer you wait to correct something, the more it becomes part of how you operate. These grooves get deeper. And once these grooves are deep, it's really hard to remove and fix. So if you want to go bigger, faster, stop looking for validation or to cover up your mistakes. As soon as you see something happening, go attack it and fix it. Start looking for the friction. Start looking for the flaws that you want to have exposed so that you can become the best version of yourself. That's where the real work is. 5, engineer your environment. Your environment is not neutral. It is either upgrading you or weakening you. And there's no middle ground about that. If you're surrounded by low standards, low level people, your brain will adapt. It normalizes shortcuts, excuses, and inconsistency. Not because you're weak, but because you're human. And it just makes you feel good about yourself to know that you're just a little bit above where most people are. But in high performance environments, the standard is external and it's high and it is enforced. And it basically removes the negotiation or that comfort. So you don't wake up and decide whether you feel like performing or going for a run. You just do it because that's the baseline. That's what everybody does. So if you're feeling a bit stuck, like you want to achieve more, look around. Because willpower is unreliable, but your environment is predictable, and it is an important factor. And if you don't create and make the effort to build an environment and bring the right people around you that demands more of you, you will naturally default to less. 6, train automatic execution. Most people think they need more focus. They do not. They need fewer decisions, because decision making is where performance often breaks, especially under pressure. So the goal of training is not to get better. It's to remove thinking from execution. In my background, repetition wasn't about practice. It was about programming. Doing something so many times, so precisely that there's no hesitation left. Like we said, you don't drill until you get it right. You drill it until you can't get it wrong. Where you create a situation where there's no second guessing, and more importantly, there is no delay, just immediate action. Because under stress, your brain doesn't rise to the occasion. It just falls to what you know is the baseline. And if your execution in high risk, high impact in moments isn't automatic, something's gonna break. So the question becomes this: what in your life still requires too much thinking? That could be one of your biggest weaknesses. And if you can just adapt some automatic, correct default behaviors, you can go a really long way. 7, stress test your system. Pressure is not something you rise to. It's something that exposes you, and it's a beautiful thing. And if your system is unstable, pressure will show it instantly. So instead of avoiding pressure, you need to use it. You need to lean into it deliberately. In elite environments, in the operations, and especially in the black ops stuff, we didn't wait for real pressure. We created it with time constraints, with uncertainty, with fatigue, with chaos, with smoke grenades, with tear gas grenades thrown at us. All these things to just make you a bit off your game and try to mess up with your mind a bit, because it is better to break in training and get confused and have something exposed than in reality. Now, most people try to avoid that because it's uncomfortable, and they only end up testing themselves when it matters. And that's why they fail, and that's why they pay a price. Now, you should already know where you are likely to break. What are your personal weak points? Because we all have them. And you should know what collapses so that you can actually fix it. And that is real preparation. Putting yourself through the toll of understanding where am I at fault and starting to fix it. 8, outlast. Don't just outperform. Now, everyone wants to be better, faster, smarter, and more talented. But at the highest level, that's not what creates separation. Consistency does, because it compounds and then everything adds up. But this isn't normal consistency. It's consistency under constant pressure. Can you execute when you don't feel like it? When results are slow, when nothing is validating your efforts and there's no dopamine hits? Because that's where most people stop. Not because they can't continue, but because they don't see the immediate reward. And the people I've worked with at the highest level, the billionaires, they're not just intense, they're resilient, and they don't rely on peaks of motivation. As the old saying goes, chop wood, carry water. They just go about their business regardless of how they feel. They operate on standards, not emotional highs. And over time, that creates a gap that's almost impossible for most people to close. So if you take anything from what I said today, let it be this. Mastery is not about talent. That's an excuse that's comfortable. It's about how you build your systems, your identity, and your execution under pressure. Most people stay average because they train in comfort, and then they expect to perform in chaos. But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. If you want to operate at a high level, you have to build for reality. Now, if you're serious about this, and if you want to identify exactly where your performance breaks, where your standards are leaking, and how to rebuild this at a very high level, you're welcome to book a strategy call below, where I break down your current approach, expose the gaps, and map out exactly what needs to change. Because again, this isn't about more information. It's about building something that actually holds when it matters. I look forward to meeting you, and you can apply using the link in the show notes below.